Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome to another live stream. And today we're going to be talking about World Cup 2026. Yay! Come on, cheer. Everybody cheer. World Cup. Cheer. Anyway, completely not martial arts related at all, but we're talking about World Cup because it is World Cup. So, before we get on to who's actually going to win this World Cup, I'd just like to say that... shit, what the fuck's happened? Oh, sorry, pardon my blaspheme and stuff. So just some big thing came up on the screen. It's all blurry now. I've not. Can I get rid of that? Oh, there it just disappeared by itself. I have no idea what the hell. Yeah, so before we get into World Cup, I'd just like to say that for 2006, guess who I'm going to be supporting? I support two teams, Scotland and anyone who plays England. So guess who I'm going to be supporting? First and foremost, it will be Scotland. And why am I going to be supporting Scotland of all the teams? Genetically, biologically, I am Scottish from my mum's side of the family. We herald from the Isle of Skye. I've been to the Isle of Skye myself, but I've been to Scotland quite a few times, and I like Scotland. I really do. It's a beautiful country. All the Scots who I've met have actually been like really nice, hospitable kind of people. And of course, I know there's probably going to be like a few not nice Scots around, but you're going to get that in every kind of country you go to. So I don't feel as though we should necessarily prejudice a group of people based on our experiences of just a few people who we've met, pardon me. So, yeah, and also as well, I feel because the last time Scotland actually got into World Cup was 1998, I believe. France, 1998. I was actually in France that year during the whole World Cup season. So, and yeah, I mean, I think that was like the very first World Cup that actually I did pay attention to. I'd just like to say, actually, I'm not a big football fan. I'm really not. Being raised in the Middle East, football was not the in thing. So I grew up with pretty much like Americanized sports. I grew up with like basketball. I grew up with what was big at the time in the Emirates was powerboat racing, the Victory team, I remember. Camel riding, though that proved to be somewhat controversial because the sheikhs and all their finite wisdom and disregard for human rights had little kids riding the camels as camel jockeys, and the kids used to fall off, break their necks. Joy and success coaching are going to be... Oh, sorry. My dyslexia is coming through. I'm going to go ahead and be the ultimate poser and say Canada is taking it. No. No. For a start, Canadians don't even know the name of the sport. So how can they win something if they can't even get the name correct? Ooh. Are you going to take that from a redcoat royalist? But lovely to have you with us, Steve. Yeah, sorry, I just take a swig of my water. But no, thank you for coming. I was just giving a little bit of a... I'm glad you got the joke. There's always this thing, like, I often find that people from stateside or across the pond don't necessarily understand, you know, British sense of humor. It's a bit too dark and dry and sarcastic. But yeah, quite often it's nice when kind of like a sense of humor is understood and appreciated. Yeah, I was just giving a bit of a backstory of saying that I'm going to be supporting Scotland myself. I was just saying that actually that my family from my mum's side are genetically from Scots, from the Isle of Skye. We've traced our family history all the way back to like the Jacobite Rebellion, which was 18th century. And yeah, it was pretty much like Isle of Skye based. And before, it was only recently we kind of like came to England. It was my grandfather met my grandmother, who was from Yorkshire in North England. They met, they got married, they came further south into like the deep south of England. And the family's kind of stayed there ever since, except for when I did my childhood in the Middle East, when I went off to Malaysia, when I spent some time in India as well. But yeah, so genetically, well, I'm going to be supporting Scotland. They've not been in a World Cup since 1998. And I just thought, you know what, I'm going to take one for the home country. We'll probably get thrashed. Scotland absolutely suck at football. But we're good when we have football matches against each other. But when Scotland do international games, we are pretty damn bad. Steve says, I grew up with Monty Python. I get jokes. Yeah, Monty Python are very much a slapstick kind of English sense of humor, to put it that way. Um, yeah, the Holy Grail, Monty Python and the Holy Grail was a favorite of mine. I've only seen Life of Brian once. Didn't like it as much as Holy Grail. And what's the other one they did? It's like The Meaning of Life or something, where everybody dies at the beginning. They're eating the salmon mousse, and death comes along. It's like you're all dead, and they're just like, oh, okay, and they go to hell or heaven. Or I started watching that, but I didn't really get into it. But you get loads of these slapstick kind of English comedies from like the 1970s, mostly. And they're stuff like Fawlty Towers, which is real slapstick. And the guys who did Fawlty Towers were also involved in Monty Python, so it's a very similar sense of humor. You get Hello Hello, which is again slapstick. What else? Some others do have them. I suppose you have to kind of live in England to kind of appreciate that kind of sense of humor. It's a bit weird. But then you get into the bizarre ones. You get like Blackadder, which is very dark and satirical. Then you get into stuff like Mr. Bean, which Mr. Bean is just, I found Mr. Bean quite creepy. Rowan Atkinson, the actor who plays Mr. Bean, looks pretty damn weird anyway. But having this character who's all like really silly and doesn't speak, and he's just like, and he gets into all these fuddles and stuff. And he has this little teddy bear which goes around with him. And he's like, oh, Teddy. It's like, yeah. The only Mr. Bean episode I liked was he went to the hotel and he had a nightmare that he was eating oysters, and I only liked that because it was weird, and I'm into the quirky kind of stuff myself, and I just found it quite humorous, even though it wasn't meant to be the whole focus of that episode. Are You Being Served? Had a slapsticky element. Yes, yes, it did. Are You Being Served? Yeah, I remember watching it when I was a kid in Dubai. They used to bring out all these, they call them British Comedy Week, and it used to be like every day of the week used to be some like comedies from the 1970s, 1980s, and it was kind of malarkey. Then the Indian corporations took over the media in Dubai, Star TV networks, and they brought out Indian comedies. Which, if you think that like Are You Being Served is slapstick, some of the Indian stuff was, it basically sunk our battleship, basically, of how slapstick it was. I mean, everything was slapstick. And when I went to India myself, I found that if I made a joke and it was very slapstick, people would appreciate it. Yeah. So that is that. Talk about comedy shows and stuff. I mean, stuff from the States. We get a lot of stateside comedies over here. I mean, Big Bang Theory is really, really popular in the UK. Friends was very, very popular as well, until they finished a season and everybody was like, oh, we need to find a new comedy. There was a vacuum, and Big Bang Theory took that vacuum, and people seem to like that because that's kind of, from what I understand from American friends who I've had, who they say that Big Bang Theory is kind of like slapstick, American slapstick version. I quite like Frasier, but again, I think Frasier was quite highbrow. But yeah, I always remember this episode of Frasier where Frasier and his brother Miles are driving in a car, and they're taking like Miles's pet canary to a vet, and Miles is sitting there with this cage and it's got canary in it, and Frasier's driving along and they're having a discussion, and Miles goes, oh, me and my girlfriend Daphne decided it was time to take little Miles and little Daphne to get their inoculations. And Frasier's like, oh, I can't believe you even named them after yourselves, Miles. And that got me. There was Frasier's dad, Martin, the seasoned cop from like Seattle, came into the room and he saw Frasier and Miles by the piano go like, dun, 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 and Miles, the dad, Martin, just goes, my boys. And he kind of like trots towards them, and suddenly Frasier just goes, on a tree by a river sat a little tom tit. And Martin just goes, and like goes to a sofa and throws his stick on the ground. Yeah, Frasier just kind of tickled me. Bollywood is so weird with songs. I did see it wasn't it wasn't a TV series, it's a film that Bollywood did, Fight Club. They did their own version of Fight Club, and it was basically Fight Club the musical. Frasier was good. Yeah, Then it stopped. They're bringing Frasier back, from what I understand now, but I've heard it's not going to be the same. Either it has come back, or it will come back. But I mean, half the cast are not going to be in it, and they're being replaced by all these other people. By all accounts, Kelsey Grammer is actually quite a difficult guy to work with, but I could only say that from speculation, from what I've heard. Obviously, I haven't worked with Kelsey Grammer myself, so I'm just going to have to take people's word for that. I actually really like Kelsey Grammer in the One X-Men movie as Beast. I thought he really had personality to convey this more intellectual mutant. Yeah, yeah, I can see that. I can see that. I'm trying to think of what X-Men movie that was. I'm not really big on like Marvel films or anything, or action hero movies, but I know the one you mean. But yeah, I saw that like when I was younger. I never really liked Hugh Jackman always being Wolverine though. Every single X-Men film or Wolverine related thing, it was always Hugh Jackman. I mean, why didn't they just get like other actors to come in, like they do with James Bond or like they do with Batman or Spider-Man? But I think it was the very first one I know they changed him out for a younger kid in some of the later movies. Quite possibly. I'll need to watch those films again. Like I said, I'm generally not big on films. I have, I'm sure, ADHD, and I find it very, very difficult to sometimes just sit down and focus on something, which is a bit oxymoronic for all the martial arts. If it interests me, I can sit and contribute my attention to it for hours. But if it doesn't really interest me, good luck, basically. But yeah, my attention span is not the best, I have to be honest. I do try, and my therapist says I'm doing so much better these days. We digress. We were talking about the World Cup. So, in this World Cup, the last World Cup, and see what I did there? My attention just went from this World Cup to the last World Cup. So, yeah. But I'm not going to get distracted anymore. We're going to talk about the debacle of the last World Cup. Now, that World Cup was weird because it was held in Qatar. I don't like Qatar. I've been to Qatar 3 times, 2002, 2003, 2006. I don't like Qatar. There's something, I suppose maybe kind of like growing up in Dubai and having aspirations to move to Bahrain. Qatar is just this weird place, which it's just like this. If you haven't seen where Qatar is on a map, it's literally just like a peninsula that sticks out into the Persian Gulf from the Arabian Plateau. Or yeah, and they've just boomed quicker than Dubai did, and now they're on the international stage everywhere, Qatar, and they think they're cool. This is a ruling family, basically. They think that they are kind of leading the way in things. So actually, you're kind of not. And they're funded by the IRGC as well, finance-wise, and the IRGC are evil, as far as I'm concerned. And if you're going to do business with somebody like the IRGC, then I don't feel as though you're not moral, and I don't feel as though that you're worthy of getting that sort of good attention, quite frankly. Some kind of Ollie growth. No. So anyway, back in 2022, Qatar won this petition to get the World Cup in Qatar. Like I said at the very, very beginning, I grew up in the Middle East, and football is not a big thing in the Middle East. It's not. When I was a kid in Dubai, nobody played football. We played cool sports. We played basketball. We played rugby. Like I said, we got very big into powerboat racing. There was a lot of like water sports, the good type of water sports, because it was on the beach. Dubai was on the beach, so we had a lot of sailing clubs. So I was a member of a sailing club called Jebel Ali Sailing Club. So all these kind of sports we had, but football we just did not take to. The Arabs didn't take to it. The expats didn't take to it. So why suddenly Qatar was like, oh, let's host the World Cup? To me, that was just a bit weird, and in and of itself, it's like, well, this is a region which has no emotional or spiritual love for football. Why do you want to host a football tournament? It's like if in England, we're like, right, we're going to host the World sumo wrestling championships, and we all dressed up like Japanese people and pretended that we're all into Japan. You know, people will look at England and be like, "You're fucking weird." Well, people do that anyway, but they'll see through it. So they'll be like, "No, you're just being fake." And that's kind of a thing that I saw of Qatar. It's like you're not interested in football at all, but there's something else behind this, and it all came down to money and prestige. Qatar believed that if we do the World Cup, it'll attract tourists to the area, it will attract investment, will attract attention. It was an attention-grabbing stunt. They actually didn't care about the sport at all. And that was shown by various weird culture things that they did when the World Cup was going on, which I'll explain a little bit about. I'll just catch up on the comments. Is badminton popular there? Yeah, actually, ball and racket sports, when I was a kid in the Middle East, were very, very popular. I was a member of a local squash team, and my coach was a former European champion, a lady called Nikki Haradine, who was Greek. She was a Greek expat. So I was a member of a squash team. My brother did tennis for a bit out there, but tennis courts, squash courts are everywhere. Badminton sports are very popular because a lot of like Filipino expats live in the region as well, and they're very big on badminton especially. And I think a lot of Chinese people and Chinese migrants and expats were very big on their badminton. So you got loads of courts, very, very big. I've heard the term sports washing. I think some of this may be an attempt to garner a better soft power internationally. That's what they are saying about bringing WWE Saudi Arabia. Yeah, Steve, you got it in one. And that was what I was going to actually move on to. What Qatar were doing was sports washing. And you're right, to an extended extent, Saudi Arabia are doing that a lot these days as well. And I was having a discussion with somebody quite recently about specifically Saudi, and that was their Formula One in Jeddah. That's sports washing, because they want to basically sports washing, like Qatar's situation. Qatar has an appalling human rights record. Qatar does deals with, like we said earlier, the IRGC. Qatar is funded by the IRGC, and now I know, not getting too much into politics, but I know recently that's changing because with the recent conflict, Iran or the IRGC have attacked Qatar, and I think the Qataris are now beginning to really question their loyalty to the Iranian government. But traditionally, it was always run. Basically, Iran was pulling the strings of Qatar. Whatever Qatar did, the IRGC were never far away. And because of those, Qatar were like, right, let's clean up our image. Let's have the World Cup in Qatar, make it look as though it's a great place. And I don't know what it was like in the States, but in England, you saw all these adverts or commercials on TV were like, come to Qatar. And they even had David Beckham, Real Madrid and Manchester United and LA Galaxy player. There was an advert where he was standing in a desert and he looked at the camera like this. There's never been a better time to come to Qatar. It was cringy and creepy. But that's what the Qataris were trying to do. It was sports washing. And to a degree, it worked because people flocked to Qatar en masse. But the World Cup in Qatar was not held in the summer, which it's always been held in the summer. It's a summer event. It's, you know, a wonderful kind of thing because people go in the summer to like watch the sports. They have a beer. They go to beer gardens, and that's just part of the experience. That's part of like the extended football culture to do that. And of course, I'm not saying go out and be an absolute yob or a hooligan. Like England football fans have a really bad reputation for doing that. But you can still have a drink and enjoy watching football without resorting to hooliganism. But Qatar were like, no, we're now doing the whole football season in like the winter months, I remember, because the summer was just too hot. Fair enough. But that then disrupts the rest of the international football schedule. So everything else had to be put on pause for the sake of Qatar. And that caused mass disruption, not just English football, but across like international football as well, was severely disrupted, purely based just because Qatar wanted to host it in the winter months. Then Qatar said, all the tourists coming over, people were concerned about beer, and especially in England, people were like, well, will tourists have access to alcohol when we're out there? And Qataris were like, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, don't worry, you'll be allowed. Well, that was it. At first they said, yeah, you can just drink. Then I believe, secondly, they were a bit later on, they're like, no, you'll be allowed a certain amount of alcohol, like prior to games, during games, and after games, to make sure people don't get drunk. Fair enough. But then once everybody was there, it was like a day before the first game kicked off. The Qataris were like, yeah, actually, we've made a decision, no alcohol at all, full stop. But they did that because then people, all the tourists and the fans had arrived. So they couldn't really back out, because I think if Qatar said from the get-go, no booze, hardly anybody would have gone. So that was that. We have had some Qatar Airways ads that seem luxurious. Ultras. Qatar Airways, I've been on Qatar Airways, and I'm going to be fair, I'm going to be honest, I quite liked Qatar, the airline. But the times I went in Qatar, like I said, I went to Qatar in 2002, before it became what it is now. I went again in 2003. I went in 2006. I was living in India, or I just finished my work in India, and I was coming back to England. And I got Qatar flight from Delhi to Doha, stayed in Doha for a bit. Then I got a Qatar flight from Doha to London Heathrow. And all the times I was on Qatar, it was fine. And as a lot of people think that Emirates is the glitz and glam airline of a region, Emirates is shit. It's a horrible airline, and they hide it behind all this glitz and glam. But at the core of Emirates, it's horrible. And my dad used to work for Emirates when we lived out there, so yeah, I can certainly vouch for Emirates not being good. So Qatar, I feel, are better than Emirates. What Qatar are like now as an airline, I don't know, because I haven't travelled on them 20 odd years. But Gulf Air, like I said, because I want to move to Bahrain, Gulf Air are the carrier of Bahrain, and I intend to go on Gulf Air soon, at some point, maybe this year, maybe next year. Certainly when I want to go off to Bahrain to do some property hunting, I'll be taking Gulf Air just to kind of compare what that's like with my experiences with other Middle Eastern airlines. So, but the last thing which I'll say about the Qatar debacle was that all of the stadiums in Qatar were built by North Korean workers. Now, these North Korean workers were essentially used as slaves. Qatar patched up a deal with Pyongyang. So again, you're looking to think, okay, this is the weirdo club. You've got the IRGC controlling Qatar. Qatar are now doing deals with Kim Jong-un in North Korea for this World Cup. Because Qatar, we're thinking, okay, we need to build these stadiums. They're going to be massively expensive stadiums. We've got loads of oil anyway, but we need the workers, we need the manpower. Who can we employ? North Korea came a knocking. Oh, we're a cash-strapped country, so if we send some of our North Koreans over to Qatar to build up your stadiums, would you mind giving us some money? Yeah, bedfellows, Qatar and North Korea. So a load of North Koreans came over to Qatar with their North Korean minders, basically there to make sure that the North Korean workers didn't abscond and try and defect. And they basically worked as slaves. Poor working conditions, poor pay. I believe, I need to research this again, but I believe they were paid, but it was something like below survival level. They just had to work, and as soon as they finished their work, they went back to their compound with their North Korean minders. There was no sightseeing around the country or anything. And as soon as they were done, they went back to North Korea. And that, for me, on that ethical situation alone, and I'm not saying that I'm the most ethical person around, but when I look at that and think that with my connections to Korea because of Taekwondo and stuff, it interests me, and I'm very much aware of the plight of the North Korean people. And then to realize that they're just being exploited for this World Cup in Qatar, which is a country is not my favorite country anyway. To me, it was weird. And even at the end of the World Cup, that when Spain won it, I remember there was this big press conference about basically journalists were asking FIFA, they were like, why did you choose Qatar? It was such a weird choice for the reasons I mentioned. And this FIFA representative, instead of like taking it on the chin and saying, yes, I appreciate it was a little bit weird and a little bit unorthodox. However, we wanted to push the boundaries and see what we could do further afield of football. That would have been maybe a satisfying answer. No, this representative for FIFA, he came back and said, he went on this really weird spiel. He was like, the West have got to understand they don't own football. The French don't own football. English don't own football. Brazil doesn't own football. Germany doesn't own football. Argentina doesn't own football. It's like, where the hell has this come from? We're not saying that all these countries, all of the countries instantly I mentioned, have very strong cultural roots in football. Go to like Argentina and Brazil. Yeah, you want a party, you want a festival, go to those places and you'll see how passionate they are about football. But nobody was saying any of these countries owned football. No country owns football, and because it's an international sport. So yeah, fine, I get what this representative was saying, but it's just like the journalist wasn't critiquing based on that cultural relativism. That journalist was questioning based on the disrupting the schedule, the weird having to change it out of a summer slot, the enormous financial cost, the North Korean workers, the fact that, yeah, as I said, Qatar, had to be honest, doesn't have a football culture. It's just like, it was just a very, very bizarre choice. But yeah, this FA representative just didn't say anything. So when we come on to like the 2026 World Cup, which is in Canada, US, and Mexico, countries which actually, I'd say, have more of an appreciation maybe for football or soccer, and I very much resent using that name. But the US, Canada, Mexico appreciate sport a lot more than places like Qatar. So to me personally, it makes more sense for those three countries to host it. Like when I heard that it was going to be in those three countries, it was just like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. It'll be interesting to see if the whole weirdness of Qatar is actually mentioned, because so far in the English media, it's not. It's almost like people don't want to talk. I remember in 2022, Qatar was mentioned more than football during the World Cup, whereas this time round, football is mentioned more than USA, Canada, and Mexico in adverts and stuff. On that note, I've heard that's happening currently in Russia, that the construction industry with the war took a huge hit, and that they've been bringing North Korean workers and treating them badly. Hold on, I need to go down. Yeah, well, from a war aspect, I did read reports that North Korean soldiers were serving in the Ukraine. And by all accounts, there was this big hoo-ha. I don't know what it's like in the States, but in England, people were like, oh my God, the North Koreans are getting involved. North Koreans going to be fighting them. And, you know, Kim Jong-un and all the Kims have been saying they're amazing. And within a week, we never heard from the North Koreans again because they'd all been killed. But yeah, it doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me at all about them bringing in North Koreans to do the hard graft and the construction and what have you. Yeah. So let's leave Qatar behind. Qatar's history. Qatar's a mess. We know that. Qatar's not a good place. But I do feel for like the citizens being attacked in Qatar at the moment. I extend my condolences to them. But politics-wise, it's a mess. So, World Cup this year. Well done, Canada, for getting it. Well done, USA, for getting it. Well done, Mexico, for getting it. Like I said, I feel that those three countries very much appreciate football a lot more than what Qatar ever did. So, yeah, good choice. I will be very interested to actually see a lot more of this World Cup. As I said, I'm not big on football at all, but when it gets to World Cup, it's kind of like, you know what? Let's just sit down and just watch, because I like watching all these different countries. I like visiting different countries. And sometimes when I watch these teams playing, they're teams or countries that you think would have no relation to each other whatsoever. Like, for instance, let's have a look and see what games are playing. So apparently today, Group B, oh, fuck, Qatar are playing. I'm being serious. Qatar against Switzerland. That's really blurry. So yeah, today Qatar against Switzerland. I hope Switzerland win. I have a feeling that Switzerland will win because, again, Switzerland football is part of their cultural identity. So yeah. And also today it's Brazil against Morocco. Morocco are obviously going to win. I mean, Morocco always win football. Brazil, they've only won it like what 4 times, but nah, whatever. They're all old. There is a game today in Philadelphia, I believe, or maybe tomorrow. Ooh, that could be either the Qatar against Switzerland, which is at 8 o'clock, and I'm assuming 8 o'clock is going to be US. It'll be Eastern Seaboard time when Philadelphia's in Pennsylvania, which is like the eastern part of the states. And Group C. Oh, actually, no. I think this is UK time because Group C, Brazil against Morocco. Apparently, it's saying today is at 11 o'clock, 11 p.m. And of course, I mean, no football team's going to play at 11 p.m. So that must be UK time because obviously, yeah, okay, my phone's based in UK, so that makes sense. Though actually, today there was a game, USA against Paraguay. Guess who won? Without checking your phone, without checking Google, without checking Wikipedia, just guess who won. I'm giving you 6 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, same as NY in Florida. Oh, sorry, you're answering about the time zone. Okay. But yeah, that makes sense actually, because like obviously New York, Florida, Eastern Seaboard as well. It will throw me if I lived in a country where they had different time zones and you're driving just along, say, like a road, and suddenly I have to say to myself, oh, it's no longer 5 o'clock, it's like 4 o'clock or something like that. That would always throw me. US 4-1. That's too good for a guess, isn't it? I went to Wikipedia or Google and found that out. Do you know who scored? Let's have a look. Oh, wait, where's it gone now? Full time. Oh, wait, there's more. Oh my gosh, I've missed out so many. Let's go back to the beginning. So, Group A, this was Thursday. Mexico against South Africa. Now, Mexico apparently got a red card. So did South Africa, but Mexico won 2-0. News. Okay, I'll let you off. So yeah, full time Mexico and South Africa. I had a feeling Mexico would probably win that. Again, Mexico are just more of a football kind of place. I know South Africa hosted it like what back in 2010, and it is part of their culture as well, I suppose. But yeah, Mexico I think are a bit more passionate about it, so it doesn't surprise me that Mexico won. Who else played yesterday? South Korea against Czechia, which is the PC name for Czech Republic. I still call it Czech Republic. Hello, other person in the chat room as well. Share your World Cup views and World Cup experience and who you think is going to win down in the chat as well. But South Korea 2, Czech Republic 1. That surprises me. But then again, in some ways it shouldn't, because South Koreans are quite passionate about football. I just felt that Czech Republic might have had a bit more experience with football to maybe turn that one around. But even I remember back in 2002, South Korea jointly held the World Cup with Japan. I liked that one. I enjoyed watching that World Cup. Also yesterday, Canada played Bosnia and Herzegovina. It was a draw, 1-1. Gosh. Bosnia. I don't even remember the last time Bosnia even played like in a World Cup. I honestly don't. Yeah, sorry, that's kind of thrown me a little bit actually. That really is a new team. I'd heard actually there'd been like quite a few strange teams. When I say strange teams, that sounds really rude, but teams that wouldn't normally be in a World Cup are actually in the World Cup this year. But again, I feel that's actually quite cool because we're seeing teams that it's not always the same teams that we have to see all the time. It's different people now coming out as well, which I think is nice. Today, yep, USA 4, Paraguay 1. Also today, Qatar against Switzerland. As we said, I'm rooting very much for Switzerland. Group C, Brazil against Morocco. I'm going to make an educated guess and say that maybe Brazil are going to win that game. I'd like Morocco to, because I've been to Morocco. It's a beautiful place. I believe it's up to 48 from 30. Yeah, it is. Yeah, I read that as well, which I think is cool because it's going to go on for longer now and yeah, just make it a lot more. worthwhile and a lot more filling, I suppose. So I'm assuming, Steve, that you're going to be supporting USA. I could be wrong. I'm just making that assumption. Other person in the chat, type in the box what team you're support. Yeah, tell you what, I'm going to type in the box what team I'm going to support, what team I'm supporting. But if I write it down, it makes it official. There we go. I actually really don't watch. That's why I always have joking about saying I'm just going to be a hoser and hype up Canada. What's wrong with Canada? I wouldn't mind going to Canada. That was the place I was talking about with some people recently about like what's the best place to go to Canada. But I feel it's like, again, like the States, it's such a vast country that you could say go to Newfoundland or Labrador and it's going to be completely different to, say, Winnipeg or Vancouver or places like this, just culturally as well. And I'm very much aware that like there's a lot of French influence in Eastern Canada, and the other parts of Canada take a lot of influence from, at first, I suppose, like English, British kind of culture, but a lot of it American as well. Nothing at all, actually. I have a few friends up that way, so anymore I jokingly say Dunkin' Donuts for Tim Hortons. Dunkin' Donuts, we have that in Dubai. Yeah, Baskin Robbins as well. Truth be told, where I'm at, Canada's like an 8-hour drive away. Other parts of the US would be absurdly further. 8-hour drive. This is something as well. With the States, I mean, I watch this guy on YouTube, and he travels all over the place and does these like ghost videos and stuff. It's very kitsch, but it's quite entertaining. And he says stuff like, "Oh, I've only driven 4 hours today to get to wherever I need to go." And for me, where I am in England, 4 hours would take me to the other side of the country, literally. So when people just say, "Oh, down the States," I don't know, I'm in Texas and I drive 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, and I'm still in Texas. For me, it's hard for me to kind of get my mind around. Yeah, it's like they've not even left their state. Like Karate Kid 1, when he lived in what was it, New Jersey, and his mum got a job all the way in California, so they drove from New York to California, and it's just like, my God, it's like you're going to like a different country. Okay, so what's happening tomorrow? Who's playing tomorrow? We've got Scotland. Yes, Scotland are playing Haiti. Sorry. That's 2 o'clock. Might see if I can. Well, actually, I'll catch up on the news about that. I'm doing something. But yeah, I'm very excited about Scotland being back for the first time in 30 odd years almost. Wow. Then we have Australia against Turkey. Actually, I'm not quite sure who would even win that. Australia, I'm going to say Australia. Yeah, I think from coast to coast, it's around 3,000 miles. Yeah, I mean, my mum keeps saying she wants to do like Route 66 one day. I think it's like on her bucket list. But yeah, it's going to take quite a long time, I reckon. I don't see anybody doing that in one day unless they're speeding. And yeah, then you get in trouble with the police. So why do you want that to happen? That's not cool. Break it down in stages. Days. If it takes a week, even better. You get to spend a whole week on the road, and I think that's amazing. If you've got like a decent camper van or transportation or something, if you're in a small crushed up little car like a Citroen Saxo, it's going to be horrible. Also tomorrow we have Germany against Curacao. Why have I not heard of this country before? I'm usually really big on geography, and I like geography. I like looking at different countries and finding out where they are, but I've never heard of Curacao. Curacao? Curacao, and the C's got like the little accent of Q. So I'm assuming maybe it's like a former French colony. Maybe it's an island. Curacao. Well, I don't know that that country. So I'm going to go with Germany on that one, perhaps as winning. Germany, yeah, Germany, quite a strong team. Also tomorrow we've got Holland against Japan. Now I'm going to say Holland are probably going to nab that one because yeah, Holland are one of those teams that they're not necessarily top notch, but they are good. I mean, whenever they play, I feel they win more often than they lose. ABC, Ireland, Caribbean, Dutch. Ah, okay, cool. Thank you very much. Pronounced as Curacao. Curacao. Okay, cool. Thank you very much. Curacao. What a wally. Moving further afield, Monday, we've got the Ivory Coast. Now, I do know where that is, against Ecuador, and I know where that is as well. Who do you think is going to win that one? I think maybe Ecuador. Yeah. Ecuador, I think, are going to win that one. Again, South American, passionate, like their football. But that being said, a lot of African players are good players in and of themselves. A lot of them play in like English Premier League teams. They leave like wherever they come from, Ghana, Ivory Coast, Nigeria, Niger, Lesotho, places like this. They come to England, they play in the English Premier League and get loads of experience that way. Then when they go back and play for their national teams, they are able to boost up their own national teams because they're sharing the secrets, so to speak. They're sharing the techniques and the skills that they've learned in English Premier Leagues, or not just English Premier League. Bayern Munich used to be a team that a lot of international players used to go to. And I used to support Bayern Munich when I was a youngster. I didn't support them like go to every single game, but if I saw them playing, I'd be like, oh, I want them to win. And I only knew about 3 of their players: Stefan Effenberg, Michael Ballack, and Oliver Kahn. Beyond that, I knew nothing much about them, but I still supported them. Just like I support Charlotte Hornets, and I don't know anything about Charlotte Hornets. I just like their logo. Then, also on Monday, we have Sweden against Tunisia. I'm rooting for Sweden on that one. I've been to Tunisia, but I was ripped off in Tunisia by £300 because Yazid decided to take me on a detour to this shopping centre where I got ripped off by like £300 worth buying junk. That was kind of my fault. I should have known better, but I just didn't. I think I was pretty drunk throughout that whole holiday. Then we have Spain against Cape Verde. Ooh, see, they're another new one. I was looking at Cape Verde quite recently as like a possible vacation spot. Actually, I've heard it's really nice in Cape Verde, and I'd like to see more of Africa as well. And I know that Cape Verde is generally, it's an island, but it's still geographically part of Africa with African culture and scenery there. So who knows? Yeah, that's a popular scam. I hear they do that a lot in Thailand as well. They'll take you to their boys' shop knowing full well their boy's going to rip you off and cut them in on half of that. Yeah, and that's pretty much what happened. Like I said, coming from the Middle East myself, I should have seen this coming a mile away, and for some reason I just didn't. Like that's why I said I think I was really drunk the whole holiday. But I was walking down the promenade from the hotel, and this just Tunisian guy came up to me and was like, "Oh, I recognize you from the hotel." Now that should have been alarm bell 1. It's a common scam in the Middle East when anybody that's the line they use. But oh, I work at your hotel, and I recognized you. You probably don't recognize me because I'm not wearing my uniform. I've just finished. I'm going home. Then he was like, whereabouts am I off to? And I said, look, I'm just off to this marketplace. It was called Medina. I was like, I'm going off to Medina. I just want to have a look around, see if I can buy a few things. Now that was on me. I shouldn't have said that to him. But this guy was like, oh, that's cool. It's like, my home is on the way past Medina, so I could walk you to the Medina, then I'll continue going home. That should have been alarm bell number 3. Somehow I kind of still got hooked into it, and he led me down to this Medina, and it was only when I was in the Medina itself, of all these shops and stuff, I thought to myself, fuck, I've just been scammed. Well, scammed. It's like I could see it was going to be a scam. And he went to this like first shop, and he was like, oh, this one's owned by my brother. And it's a typical kind of like Arab thing to say that. It's like, this shop's owned by my brother or my cousin. It's owned by my brother-in-law. It's owned by my sister-in-law. It's owned by my dad. it's owned by insert family member here. It's always owned by somebody who they know or they're related to. I went into the shop, and to be fair, it was a nice shop and it had a few nice things to sell. So I was like, actually, I'll stay and have a look around. I got myself like a scorpion in like a little glass box. I bought myself for my training. I bought an Under Armour t-shirt, which is probably overpriced, but it's held me in good stead, and I wear it when I do my exercises and like go for my runs. So actually, I got a bit of something from that. And there's a few other things as well. But as soon as that was finished, and I said to the shop owners, "Look, you know, I'm done. I'm heading off." Suddenly, this urchin guy appears, and he was like, "Oh, you know, just before you go, you know, thank you for helping my brother out. But just before you go, can I maybe just show you this place?" And again, it led into another shop. I think I got something from there as well. But when that was done, I just said like, "No, that's it. I'm done." And I came out, and he was still trying the whole, "Oh, what about this?" And I was just like, "No, no, no. You know, times are cracking." And I pretty much just kind of, I walked through out of the Medina, but I had my phone up, like pretending that I was like taking calls and stuff. So when I had people from the shops coming up to me like, "Oh, hello, Mr. Westerner, you want to come into my shop?" And I was just like, what sorry? What? No, I'm on the phone. Leave me alone. Yeah, but I mean, when I got back to the hotel, I was just like, it was like, my God, it's like, how did I fall for that? That was like such a rookie mistake. And, you know, I should have seen it coming from a mile off. And for some reason, I just did not clock. I have no idea, but it's become a bit of like a family joke. We called the guy Yazid. Don't even know if that's his real name, but yeah, whenever we say, "Oh, remember in Tunisia, we met Yazid," it's like, oh, yeah, him. But lessons were learned. Lessons were well and truly learned from Yazid and his Tunisian experience. I think it's to give you the impression that I'd be upset if you disrespect the person, aka play into the scam with a little less hesitancy. Yeah, yeah. I mean, the best thing, like I said, what I learned when I go back to the Middle East, if I want to do some exploring, I will be walking around with my phone, with some like headphones plugged in. I mean, I probably won't be listening to anything, because if I'm listening to music, I'm not aware of my surroundings. So I'll just pretend to have something, or just have it in my pocket. Headphones maybe like showing, but they're not connected to anything. So it gives me an excuse not to engage with people. Or if they try talking to me, then I'm not causing any disrespect, because they're like, "Oh, he can't hear. He's got his headphones on." But yeah, I'm not quite sure how we even got onto this. But Thailand, yeah, you mentioned about Thailand. Oh my God, there's loads of games. We're going to go through all of these. Iran. Oh, Saudi Arabia. Oh, before we do that, Spain against Cape Verde, Belgium against Egypt. I reckon Belgium are probably going to win that one. Saudi Arabia against Uruguay. Money's on Uruguay. Saudi Arabia, again, not football heavy country. Well, with the sport washing thing they're doing a lot at the moment in Saudi Arabia. I know we mentioned them earlier, but they're very big on the Formula One at the moment, which again, I don't agree with necessarily with Saudi having that for the moral and the political reasons. MMA events in Saudi. But yeah, still a long way to go football-wise, so I reckon Uruguay are going to nab that one. Then we get into Iran against New Zealand. Now, the Iranian football team, I learned something quite interesting the other day. The Iranian football team are not part of the Iranian government. So the Iranian football team can go to the States to play the World Cup. And obviously we know what's happening in the Middle East at the moment. United States and Iran are trading blows. And of course, United States and Israel are very strong allies. Iran, absolutely, the Iranian government, let's say, absolutely hate Israel and want to eliminate Israel. So there's going to be some friction there. And you think, wouldn't it just be better maybe if Iran just don't go? And think the state that Iran's in at the moment, the Iranians, you think, wouldn't be interested in the World Cup. They'll be like, right, at the moment, we're actually fighting pretty much for our survival. Why do we want to go to this World Cup? But I learned that the football team is not part of the IRGC. I think it's like a separate entity entirely. And where the Iranian football team goes, they can choose themselves. It's like they've got their own like sports parliament or something, sports senate, and they can choose what tournaments to get engaged in, independent of the IRGC. But a bit like North Korea, wherever the Iranian national team go, they have to take IRGC minders with them for the same reason as North Korea, because the IRGC don't want the Iranian football team, to start talking with other players or talking with fans from different countries or going off to the States. I mean, imagine that. Like Iranians in the Iranian football team who've been brought up being told, you know, death to the USA, blah, 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 death to the West, you know, hate Britain, hate France, hate all these places, hate Israel. And they go to the States, the football tournament, and they see what the States has to offer culturally, economically, materialistically as well. They're probably going to have sensory overload. They're going to be like, we've been told our whole lives to hate you people, that you're the big Satan. And we're seeing actually that that's not the case. We're seeing that actually America is like a huge country with loads to give. And that will start making them change their minds. And they could then come back to Iran and start saying to other Iranians, hey, actually, America's not that bad. And obviously the IRGC don't want that. So even though the team can go, they have to take IRGC minders with them to make sure that they don't talk to like everyday Americans or people from other countries. But there was I understand, a bit of a political hoo-ha as to kind of like what IRGC minders can go to the States. And I think they're going to be watched and supervised by CIA. Did the local news was saying the Iranian team actually had posted up down in Mexico and going to drive into the US. They might have not been able to fly in, but there's some itinerary con. I think I'll need to look into that again. I'm going to be honest, but I think they actually got a sports visa or a sports pass where they could actually go to the States. But it was just a strange issue with these IRGC minders. So the Iranian football team can enter the States, if I've got this correct, but the IRGC members are going to have to go through other means to get in. But of course, the IRG, the States, I'm sure, are going to make it very, very difficult for them. And you know, who can blame them? Because technically they're at war with Iran. So it's like, think about World War II. If certain members of the ruling German party at the time, we all know who I'm talking about, but I'm not able to say it on YouTube, wants to come over to, say, England or America or France during World War II to watch a sports game, we'd be like, no, we'll arrest you. So, yeah, I'm going to have to look into that to get the actual specific details. But I think the team can go. But, of course, the IRGC want to be there as well to make sure that the team don't go off and run away or start getting ideas or talking to other people. Wait, your government doesn't kill 20,000 in a weekend? The whole thing's weird. You just think just for ease of learning, for ease of everything, you just think the Iranians would just be like, let's just not do this. It'll be interesting to see how all this kind of happens. And again, you're probably going to get protesters, anti-IRGC protesters at these games as well, or outside. So it'll be very, very interesting, and it'll be interesting to see how it's filmed and broadcast on Iranian state TV, which again is owned by the IRGC or the Iranian government. It'd just be interesting to see how they kind of broadcast it, what's going on. Imagine if actually the USA did play Iran and the USA won. And would that be broadcast on Iranian TV? Because that would be really rubbing the salt into the wound. Yeah, I'm gonna have to look that up. Because it was, when I saw it, it was on TV, but it was kind of just like a passing, glancing kind of thing. I didn't really sit down and pay much attention to it. It was just stuff I overheard. But yeah, I'm going to have to sit down and actually do proper research about that. Iraq are playing as well. Iraq against Norway. Wow, that'll be interesting. I think the first time Iraq have been in, well, in modern memory. Argentina against Algeria, Austria against Jordan, Portugal against Congo, England against Croatia, Ghana against Panama, Uzbekistan against Colombia, Czech Republic against South Africa, Switzerland against Bosnia, Canada against Qatar, Mexico against South Korea, USA against Australia, Scotland against Morocco. Yeah, I think those are all the teams. Yeah. Well, that is interesting. Like I say, there's some very, very interesting teams there. Stuff like, well, Saudi Arabia, I know they've played it before, but Iraq, that's a new one to me. The Iran, I know they've been in World Cups before, but just with what's going on, I didn't expect to see them. Ivory Coast, Morocco, didn't see them. Congo, again, Congo as well, Democratic Republic of Congo. I know, like I said earlier, a lot of footballers do come out of Africa, but the situation in Congo at the moment, I kind of, well, it's never really recovered since the war they've had. It's always been a little bit of a trepidatious kind of place to be or to visit. I certainly want to visit Congo myself, and I'm actually quite an adventurous explorer. I've been to some pretty weird and wonderful places in my travels. I've been to Kosovo. I went to Kosovo for a long weekend just by myself. Albania. Again, Albania is not dangerous. It gets bad rep, but I mean, what I will say of Albania is that it's not got proper infrastructure per se. So if you went sick in Albania, you're going to get sick. You know, it's not like Europe or the EU or the States, Canada, places like this, or Australia, where if you go sick, you know you've got stuff that can look after you. Yeah, Algeria I want to go to as a place. Jordan I want to go to, but again, Jordan I wasn't expecting to be here. Argentina against Jordan. Argentina, I feel are going to win that one. Just a hunch. Uzbekistan. Well, they're against Congo. Oh, I actually wouldn't mind watching some of these, to be honest. I think some of them could be like very, very interesting. Uruguay, Ghana, Croatia, Uzbekistan. That's, oh, wow. So, where were those early games? Yeah, well, well done to the USA for beating Paraguay. Well done to Canada for drawing with Bosnia. Well done to South Korea for beating Czech Republic. Well done to Mexico for beating South Africa. And yeah, I'm going to say well done to Switzerland for forward thinking, beating Qatar. Now I've said that, probably all, I don't know, who knows what dodgy dealing is going to happen. I don't know. Has the IRGC infiltrated Qatar to bribe match officials? Are there going to be like a few extra fouls committed and a few red cards are not going to be issued? Maybe if Switzerland score a goal, I don't know, Qatari money makes the referee go, no. I didn't see that. No. No goal. Handball and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, I want Switzerland to win that one for reasons that we've explained earlier. Brazil against Morocco. Brazil, I reckon, are going to win, but I want Morocco to, just because I like Morocco. And like I said, I've been there. Beautiful place. And yeah, of course, for tomorrow, Sporting Scotland against Haiti. And shouldn't base a country based on dictators, but I remember reading about Papa Doc Duvalier from Haiti. I even wrote a story when I was a kid called Papa Doc. It had nothing to do with Papa Doc, but I called it Papa Doc just because I liked the name Papa Doc, even though he was a dictator and I didn't like what he did to his people. But I just thought it was like such a cool name for a villain. It's like something from a James Bond film. Oh, hello, Mr. Bond. My name is Papa Doc, and I am a doctor, and I am a papa as well. Baby Doc. Wow. So yeah, we've got quite a lot of things, quite a lot of interesting matches coming up. A lot of interesting teams. I'd say a lot of it quite political as well. Very, very interesting. Yeah, dude, Haiti has been a mess for quite some time right now. It's basically a war zone. That's uninhabitable. The gangs for taking it over. Yeah, I mean, I didn't realize it was that bad. I mean, I knew they had a very, very rough time recently, but it's weird, isn't it? Because you politics always comes in, but quite recently, the leader of the UK Labour Party, or the old leader of the UK Labour Party, was a guy called Jeremy Corbyn. He was an absolute communist. He's started up a new party now called Your Party. And that's the name of it, Your Party. It's not my fucking party. Don't tell me who I'm going to vote for. But basically, his inspiration was Venezuela. And there's videos of him on YouTube like praising Venezuela, and there was this weird radio talk show where you saw this Venezuelan news guy with all these Venezuelans crouching around him, and he's on his radio and he's like, "We're talking to London, we're talking to Corbyn, talk to us, Corbyn." And then you hear Corbyn's voice come on, and he's like all tired and emotionally drained, and he's like, "Oh, gracias, presidente." And it's just like, this is weird. But yeah, Corbyn was like very much influenced by Venezuela. Most people in England, because Venezuela is so far away from the UK, most people in England don't know anything about Venezuela at all. If you showed them a map of the world and said, point where Venezuela is on the map, people wouldn't know where to point. Most English people's geography is surprisingly bad, which is a bit weird when you consider like the British Empire and how much of the world we actually once administered. You'd expect people to have a bit more like be able to speak different languages. Most people in English have no idea of French. Most people have no idea that English actually came out of German. I know, like an ancient form of German, but it's still Germanic roots. Most English people won't be able to tell you that. And the geography is staggeringly bad. But anyway, don't know where I was going with that. But Venezuela, when I started reading about Venezuela, why is Corbyn so obsessed with Venezuela? What is it that makes Venezuela, or the system, the government and the infrastructure of Venezuela so good that Corbyn wants to mimic it? And I started doing research about Venezuela, and I realized that it's not that great a place. And that's putting it quite diplomatically, should we say. It's certainly not a place I'd want to go to for my own safety. And I wouldn't trust myself there. I could probably go to Venezuela and I'd probably get arrested, like at the airport. We got there on the topic of failed states in South America and or the Caribbean. Yes. Yeah. So we did. My bad. Yeah, and the more I read about Venezuela, it kind of branched out into like all these other countries in South America, like Argentina, how Argentina came around and the history of Argentina and what they went through. It probably sounds quite easy for me to say this being a Brit, but the whole Falklands War was mostly so it will take the attention of the Argentines, everyday Argentines, working class Argentines, away from the country's own domestic problems to become more patriotic. And the Argentine regime believed that if they invaded Falklands, it will distract the people from what's going on inside the country. But also it believed it will kind of boost up its own popularity, which it did for a while. But then obviously when the Falklands War ended, the everyday Argentine then had to make do with the reality that actually, yeah, we've not actually got. But the Argentine government, ever since then, has never dropped its claim to the Falklands, or the Islas Malvinas, as they call it. And I spoke to one guy who actually did go to Argentina, and he wrote a joke on a menu. He put like Falklands will always be part of Britain, and he said that the barman, the waiters they were so enraged by this, they actually basically chased him out. But yeah. Countries, I believe, I'm not a politician, but countries, I believe, should focus on their own domestic situations before they try drawing other things into that loop. And quite often you'll see throughout history that if a government is unpopular, they will start a crisis or they'll exploit a crisis to take people's attention away from what's actually going on in their own home country. But like I said, that's getting to politics. And we've been here talking about football, which has been really, really cool. And it's been a different live stream because we're mostly talking about politics and martial arts. So it's good to talk about something different. I feel on that note, I'm going to go off and I'm going to keep tabs on if Switzerland nuke Qatar. When I say nuke, I don't mean literally nuke. I'm just talking like metaphorically, YouTube police. And then tomorrow, I'm going to see how Scotland do against Papa Doc Duvalier. Yeah. That being said, Steve, thank you so much for joining. Thank you for sharing your experiences and your thoughts. Always very much appreciated. You know, I do appreciate you visiting the channel and leaving comments on my videos. And, you know, I'll do likewise on yours as well. I know that I haven't really done that as much as you visiting my channel, but no, I like what you put out. I like your recommendations on your books. So I'll be visiting your channel more and more. I may even be actually making some recommendations and suggestions as well about certain books. For instance, Teach Your Cat Cornish. I'll recommend this on your channel as well. And then everybody can learn Cornish. How do you say goodbye in Cornish? Well, be quiet is cow. It's good to know. Are you okay? Os tadal lura. Don't scratch. I think I'll save that for later. Stop. Goratos. God, you have so much fun with Teach Your Cat Cornish. Play discussion about an art form with kicks and the occasional headbutt. That's Choi Kwang Do. No, we'll talk about Choi Kwang Do another time. Steve, thanks once again. Stay safe, train hard, keep watching the FIFA World Cup. We'll keep rooting for the United States after Scotland, and see you next time. Take care, man. Peace.